Well, good morning, everyone. That was Ricky Byers Beckwith, the former wife of Michael Beckwith. Many of you guys are familiar with him from the uh, video The Secret, a very profound teacher. She is a wonderful artist. She has quite a few songs that touches the soul, and that song was "Let My Soul Surrender." Well, good morning there. I pray things are well with each of you as you have decided to engage me at this time. For some of you, it's Sunday morning for Serendipity. Not Serendipity Sunday. This is the science of successful living. Over the many years that I've been out here, I've had many iterations of this, and now we're teaching inside of this hour, and we call it the science of successful living. It's not about a religious conversation, but it's about developing a spirited practice. So again, I hope whatever time it is, wherever you are, that it reaches you at the right time. So I'm going to encourage you to perhaps cut off some of the things that may be competing with this morning's presentation. Be present, and if you can't be present, do the thing that is most pressing for you. Don't spend your life trying to segment your life, but sometimes you got to show up very deliberate and intentional inside of the moment. And then when you do that, life delivers to you entirely different presentation when you can choose at designated times to say, this is what I'm doing right now. And I believe that many of you who are tuning in right now are tuning in not by accident, but this um, is incidental in that it's supposed to happen. Well, I'm Asar, also known as Greg Stanton. I'm your facilitator for these conversations each and every Sunday morning. Now, I call them conversations because I hope to engage some of you, but many times it don't turn out to be a conversation. It becomes more of a monologue. But that being said, if that's the way it needs to be, that's the way it is. So I just present the information and let you disseminate it how you feel deem most appropriate for you. For those of you who are joining me in the Zoom room, good morning. If everything is well, type it in there. If the volume is too low, if I need to adjust something, type it in there. If I can accommodate you, I will. For those of you who are joining by way of the YouTube Live this morning, Oasis Spiritual Center YouTube Live channel, I say good morning to you all, good afternoon, good evening, a good day, whatever day and time that it may be that we're engaging. Well, this morning I want to present a brief presentation that delves into the complexities and often overlooked consequences of acculturation, especially within the African American community. Our esteemed um, our self-esteem is oftentimes impacted because of the feel or the need to acculturate. We're going to look at that this morning. How it has, we have to unravel the intricate ways in which we find we've adopted this foreign cultures and how it's impacted the psychological and spiritual fabric of the African in the diaspora and the African on the continent, even to today. So some of the highlights that I want to pull out this morning in this brief time that we have together, I want you to understand the profound psychological impacts, including identity loss and internalized inferiority that comes with acculturation. We want to explore the spiritual ramifications, such as the disconnection from our indigenous spirit system. And I don't use it, I'm leaning away from using the word spirituality because in the Kemetic science, there was no word for spirituality, it was spirit. What we call spirituality is actually the practice of religion. And sometimes it's so enmeshed with various religions, and we say that's spirituality because it embraces all religions. But the Nile Valley civilization that gave us spirit systems did not practice spirituality. They then you don't have to practice what you are if you understand that you are a divine spirit being. That's important. So we're going to explore the spirit, the ramifications of acculturation on our spirit systems and our community traditions. And lastly, we want to do a drive-by on um, this discussion of how to navigate and mitigate these challenges that acculturation brings into our lives. So as you settle in with your pen and paper, perhaps, and often I tell you, don't even take pen and paper only to jot down a question that you may want to come back around to. But I say listen to it first and then listen to the replay, and then you will formulate questions, or your question may be answered as we go through this morning's presentation. I want to let you all know that I'm in the midst of writing my first book, and it's entitled Sankofa, Remembering Ancient African Spirit Systems Amidst Cultural Misorientation and Cognitive Dissonance. So we started talking about cultural misorientation a couple of weeks ago, and I'm circling back to it because I think we have to reorient ourselves first by understanding that we are disoriented and we have been misoriented. And so today's lecture is entitled The Danger of Acculturation. And if you got the email, you saw the image was a mask, like the masquerade, the mask that individuals may wear at a masquerade ball. And it says the danger of acculturation. So acculturation basically is identified by an individual who wears a mask. The mask oftentimes is so much different from who we really are. The mask often represents a safety, that is, that I'm presenting to the world what I want them to see. And it can be an illusion because behind the mask, you're so different from. And now this is you got to learn how to juggle this type of conversation, because we all wear masks. And sometimes the mask we wear are the masks that represent what we desire to be. And sometimes we wear a mask that represents safety. And I believe that the mask of acculturation for many of us is evolved through first safety. We took on the belief systems, we took on the mores, we took on the culture of the oppressive society or systems that we were in order that we may survive. So we were in survival mode. And then as time went on, our belief systems shifted, not understanding why our ancestors had actually adopted this acculturation process. And we took it on to say that this is who we are. For many of us in America, we identify as Africans, African Americans, instead of Africans in America. And to be American means to acculturate to what in most cases represent not even the native individual, the indigenous population here, but the acculturating into the transported culture that came to America, oppressed America, and created these ideals that we fall into. So it's not as simple as saying that it happened overnight. This took place over hundreds of years, and what we are almost 300 years old as a nation, and then we've been in this this process of oppression for 400 years under the Western oppressive system, and then we had another 1,200 years that preceded that of oppression under the Islamic and Arab oppressive systems that impacted the continent. So many times we define ourselves, historical selves, inside of either one of these enslavement processes. But we need to go back to the beginning. I say, if man is 30,000 years old, well, it's believed, science says, man is probably somewhere around 300 years old. And science is showing that around 30,000 years ago, is when we began to see the differentiation from the original design of man, meaning the phenotype of man being African in its essence, and black, when I say in the Africoid in its essence. And over these hundreds of thousands of years of migration, we see that the environments that they went into over a course of time changed them. I often watch the Animal Planet, and I'm amazed at the number of animals who have learned to, or genetically over the course of time, adjusted their physical form in order to survive. And that is what has happened to, when you understand the northern cradle and what we call the southern cradle theories of evolution. It allows for the environment and the culture that comes from that. And if you understand that, you can kind of understand why the African has been subjected to all that it's been subjected to. Because somebody asked me recently, if we were so great, why didn't we put up a resistance against the incoming oppressive systems? First of all, when they first came into Africa, they weren't coming in an oppressive manner. They began to integrate and they began to acculturate. But in the integration and the acculturation, or the wearing of the mask of fitting in, their natural selves, was their worldview was maintained. The northern cradle theory says that because of the environment, man had to learn to survive, and it was survival of the fittest. It wasn't about the group, it was about the survival of the individual. Whereas in the southern cradle, it's not about the survival of the individual as much as it is about the survival of the group. And when it relates to the individual, it's about, what am I doing that's going to bring value to my community? So it does come down to it comes to the we, the us, and the I. And so we all have to be responsible for the I of ourselves. But we got to also keep in mind, does what I'm doing not only benefited the highest and greatest good of me as an individual, but does it also um, uh, show up as the highest and greatest contribution to the family I'm in, to the city I'm in, to the state I'm in, to the nation that I'm in? So that's when we look at the positiveness of the Southern cradle theory. And I'll go more into that, particularly as we move deeper into these teachings and move it over into what we naturally call Black History Month. And that's history, Black History Month. And we got to begin to reframe history to make it our story, which is my story is a mystery. So this morning we want to look at the acculturation process. Acculturation, the process where individuals or groups from one culture adopt the practices and values of another. Now, it has had complex and often detrimental effects on the psychological and spirit well-being of Africans, again, on the continent itself, and those of us who are here in the diaspora. This phenom is particularly pronounced when considering the imposing or the imposition of Western or European culture norms and values on the African community. Now, we look at the Western and the European norms that have been imposed, but we also have to address the norms that have been imposed by the religious systems of these cultures, such as, and that will be inclusive of the Islamic cultures. Because sometimes we make one better than the other, but we have to look at how are these things impacting us. And so I started this conversation by saying that man is over 30,000 years old. But how far back can you look in history? Can you look back 1,000 years? Can you go back 12,000 years? Can you go back 4,000 years? Now, when you go back 4,000 years, you erase, there's no such thing as Christianity as we know it today. If you go back 4,000 years, There's really no such expression of Judaism. There's no expression of Islam. 4,000 years. So we erasing that. So let's go back a little further. And so when we go back and we erase these religious systems, not that I'm devaluing them, but I'm saying that we have to stop starting the story at the end of the story. Let's go back to the beginning. And you can't allow people to define the beginning from their position. When we read the traditional cosmological story in the book of Genesis, we see that this is a telling of a story that is supposedly written by Moses and is adopted into the Judaic religious system. But when you understand that this individual, this character called Moses, was really a retelling of the story of a true individual under suit of Pharaoh named Akhenaten. And Akhenaten was the one who presented what the world is calling a form of monotheistic theism, that the Lord thy God is one. That comes right out of the Nile Valley civilizations of the oneness of being. Now, there's one source, or which many people call God, that have many iterations or manifestations. No one individual, no one God, no one depiction of source can suffice to define source. Example, we are created in his image after his likeness. We are all have a similar commonality, but yet we are all very different. But yet in the difference, we are still manifestations of source. And we have to come to the realization. We have to move away from this idea that there is a thing called the human race. There is no such thing as the human race. There is only one race with many variations. The original race of mankind is humankind, human. So it depicts right there. Hue means color. Man of color, individual of color, was the actual prototype of all the differentiations we have today. And then once we can embrace the differences, the differentiations, the different manifestations, and take it back to the one, reconcile from whence it all came, we'll have a better understanding. So that's important as we look at acculturation. Now, acculturation is a psychological term. I've been talking about misorientation in the weeks gone by, and I'm going to encourage you, for the sake of time, to grab that video. As a matter of fact, I'll hook that video to this one when I send the newsletter out. So let's look at the psychological impacts of acculturation on people of African descent. One, there's a loss of identity. Two, there's internalized inferiority. For many of us, we have a level of inferiority, so we even wear more of a mask, and we're going to look at how that manifests itself. And three, our mental health challenges that come with the acculturation process. Well, the Bible tells us, can a leopard change its skin? And so the fact of the matter, can an African change its essence just by taking on the outward images or acclimating to the cultural norms and ideas? At its core, it does not work, because you can't change your soul essence, your soul expression. Tuesday night, I'm going to go into this deeper, because man is a spirit that possesses a soul and lives in a body. The ancient science tells us that man is a Kaaba. A Ka is your Ka is that part of you that represents the spirit of God. All of us have the same Ka, essence of the same Ka. And then the Ba represents your unique expression, your unique personality that identifies you. And we're going to look at that deeper on this coming Tuesday. So let's look at the loss of identity as it pertains to acculturation. Now, acculturation, is it bad? No. Is it good? No. Does it serve its purpose? Yes. There's acculturation that comes by way of one choosing to acculturate, like I choose to wear. Example, just to make it basic and simple, I dress with African themed garments sometimes. Sometimes I dress with high fashion, what you may call the acceptable high fashion norms. So that's more of a acculturation. But because I wear maybe a Gucci belt or shoes, does that mean that I'm not African centered? No. So we have to stop defining things at the face value because I was at an event last night, wonderful event. And I'm not going to mention the event, but it was wonderful. Um, the African Americans that came out to be part of this, many of them was arrayed in cultural garments. Some of them were arrayed in just fine clothing, and they had masks on. And I just saw all of that as a level of acculturation. Even though individuals who wore cultural garments, I had a couple conversations, and their conversation was not consistent with the garment that they were wearing, and that was because of acculturation, and that is because of what I introduced on a couple weeks ago, misorientation, cultural misorientation. All of us have a degree of cultural misorientation. But when you have that degree of cultural misorientation that masks you as though you're something other than you are not, it causes a problem because you lose your identity. One of the most profound psychological impacts of acculturation is the erosion or loss of an individual's cultural identity. Your language, your songs, your dances, your mores, your practices. As Africans adopt Western norms and values, there's often a distancing, which we can see it, from our own cultural practices, languages, and traditions. We can't speak our languages. And then we have learned in the 70s, when I was a kid, I was 10, it was a big push for us to learn Kiswahili. So Kiswahili, is the trade language across the continent for the most part. So it allows them to communicate. So we have our own language today within the African American or the African community. We can say things that means one thing in the dominant culture or what appears to be the dominant culture. But when we used to use that same word, it takes on a different connotation. So the language thing. But we have, for the most part, lost our cultural identity. Many Africans in the diaspora and even on the continent don't want to identify with the continent, with our ancestral culture. It is because we've been misoriented, and as a result of the misorientation, we're disoriented. So, as Africans begin to adopt Western norms and values, we have found that it's often a distancing from our cultural practices, languages, and traditions. And then we begin to make up practices. In America, we have Kwanzaa, is one thing that we have made up. We've taken what we believe to be some of the best practices from the continent, and we created this cultural holiday. But even in there are some things that could be challenged, and that's not the nature of this conversation. But just because it's created by us don't mean it always represents our highest and greatest good. I have come to learn that many people that are espousing things are espousing them for their financial gain. When I look at many of our theologians, and many of our psychologists, many of our social workers who've never had a class in black psychology or black theology, or even that looked at the ancient Nile Valley spirit systems, they are presenting what has been given to them, and because it's cloaked inside of their phenotype of being a black man or a black woman, and they present it to us, we sometimes think that they're presenting our highest and greatest good. But au contraire, that is not the case. So we got to understand that this loss of identity can lead to a sense of rootlessness and a weakened sense of self. And that's what we find ourselves being impacted by as individuals struggle to reconcile their native cultural identity with the adopted ones. And that's kind of where we are. I think the grandest time in the recent history was the 60s, the 60s for sure, because the struggle was real, and we were winning. The 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. Towards the end of the 70s, we began to slip. We allowed the acculturation to be sold to us that our schools was not better than their schools. So they sent bust our children to other communities. Now, here's what people don't realize. When you look at population growth, our population has grown steadily until most recently. And so the school systems allocate money by the number of butts in seats. And so if your population isn't growing at a rate that is significant enough, then that means the allocation of funds to your school district is going to be more minimal. So the way we combat that, or the way society combated that, was they shipped the African children to the white schools. You didn't see the white children oftentimes being shipped to the black schools, but it was as though their ice was better than our ice, not realizing that all ice freezes at the same temperature. So that's a good example of sometimes when we are sold the idea of acculturation, it wasn't really for our highest and greatest good. Because even when our children were shipped to or bused to those other communities, they were often met with violence. They was often met with psychological oppression, even in the classroom. And there was nobody there to manage it. So we have to be very careful. We wonder why some of our best minds are black people, or they're in black skin, but with Western orientation, because this is what they've been influenced by. So we have a loss of identity. Then we have the internalized inferiority. Acculturation often comes with the implicit and sometimes explicit messaging that the incoming culture is superior. The oppressive culture is superior. For those of African descent, this can lead to internalized feelings of inferiority regarding their own cultural heritage, impacting self-esteem and self-worth. Last night, while we were at the event, they sang the Black National Anthem, and I noticed that when the national anthem is sang, people stop walking and stop talking. But when while they were singing the Black National Anthem, people were still mingling, talking, moving, conversations going on. And I looked at some of the younger people, maybe 2 or 3 generations younger than me, and they didn't even know the words to it. They weren't even singing it. When I look at those who are in my age group, we know it by memory because we sang it. I know at 10 years old, we were singing that in the classroom every morning. I went to a predominantly African American school. There were some whites there and some Hispanics there, but the needs of the masses outweighed. We didn't change that. Our administrator said these are black children, and those who were not black could benefit from knowing about the experience of these black children. So I grew up pretty healthy psychologically. I embrace my cultural past because I'm a 70s child. I'm a 60s child. I find those who born in the 60s and 70s usually have another way of looking at things. But for the most part, the acculturation process is infectious and dangerous. It presents itself with mental health challenges. The conflict between one's native culture and the adopted culture can create significant mental health challenges. Always trying to be something that you aren't. Always having to be conscious of making sure, what do I like before I go to work? Sometimes I would like to wear a conscious garment, but how would that get in the way of me being able to impact a veteran who does not look like me? Even in the leadership, how will they look at that? But when you get 60, 63, you really don't care about how people look at you for the most part. But I'm conscientious because I have a greater goal when I go to work to make sure that person's sitting, that I don't get in the way of that person in front of me being able to get what they have come there to get. But I don't allow them to get what they're looking for at the expense of who I am either. So when we look at the mental health challenges, this cultural dissonance leads to stress, anxiety. Now, the number one killer amongst people of African descent is stress and anxiety and depression. Oftentimes we mask as though everything is all right because we get all dressed up, we feel good temporarily, but there's a lot of depression going on, particularly not really knowing how this time of the year is a depressive time of the year. As we go into the darkness and we don't get as much sunlight, it impacts us, and we have affective seasonal disorder at a disproportionate amount than others who don't synthesize or process the sun in a way that we do. The sun is our friend. We've been created, we've been designed for it. That's why you see our bodies are hairless for the most part, because our skin can access the strength of that. Our hair, when we look at our natural hair, it was out. The natural hair of an African is one that is coiled, and some people may say nappy, but it's like a radiator. It allows for that heat to come and to transmute that energy right into the body. But now we perm, we relax our hair, we destroy our design. Now a lot of times we do that because we have been so the bill of good that straight looks better than natural. But we're now in a place where people are way more natural, but sometimes they go too far. Look like they look unkept when they come out. You just look like you didn't do nothing to your head, but let's fluff it up, do something with it. So we have mental health challenges. So those are the psychological impacts of acculturation. Just glossing over them: loss of identity, internalized inferiority, mental health challenges. Now let's look at one that the spiritual impact of acculturation on people of African descent. Disconnection from our indigenous spiritual system is we want to look at that. We want to look at the loss of community and tradition that comes with that, and then look at spirit alienation. The word tells us, what does it profit a man to gain the world and lose their soul? Many times people, when they hear that, they means that you're living inside of righteous living. You are drinking and being merry. But I say that is a part of it. There's a greater part of it. Acculturation is the losing of your soul. We're going to talk about that because many people inappropriately define or attempt to define the soul. Man is a spirit that possesses a soul and lives in the body. So there's two parts to who we are, three parts. We are spirit, we're soul or ba, and then we are a physical being. The physical being is just the container you're in. That's the least important, but that's the thing that most people can see. They can see your skull or your skin. They can see your genotype, your phenotype. And so they define you or interact with you from that perspective. And if you have an oppressive society that looks different than you, and you have found that in order to move through, you take on the forms of their beauty because that's what's projected to you. You take on their language. You learn the king's language and it appears to be more eloquent. Or you learn French because it appears to be a more romantic language. Or you learn Greek or you learn Hebrew. But have you ever thought about learning the Meduneta, how to read and to speak that, or learning an African language? Because we see those as primitive because of the imposition, the imposing of a culture on our people physically and on our minds. So that's important. So when we look at the spiritual impact of acculturation on us as a people, we must understand it's like a disconnection from the indigenous spirit practices. The indigenous spirit practices. I'm not going to use indigenous spirituality. We're moving from using spirituality to using spirit practices. One thing, if you begin to study the spirit practices on the continent from the West Coast to the East Coast, from the northern borders to the southern extremities of Africa, you'll find that there's expressions in different ways, but they all have at its essence the same conversation. So when we talk about disconnection from the indigenous spirituality, acculturation often involves the adoption of Western religious beliefs, leading to a disconnection from our indigenous African spiritual or spirit practices. This shift has created a spirit void or conflict, as traditional African spirit systems are typically deeply intertwined with the cultural identity, community, cohesion, and a sense of belonging. See, the spirit practice is part of the culture of the African itself. Example, the spirit practice of I am my brother's keeper. It's a spirit practice. So when those who look different than us showed up in our community needing something, even you looking at the historical conversation with Joseph and his family, they showed up on the African continent. They showed up in the bread basket of Africa, and they needed something. And the Egyptians or the Kemetic communities, the Nile Valley communities, gave these things to them. Now we're staying inside of the story. I'm not saying that actually happened, but just it's even with the concept in the story that we invited them in, we fed them, and at the end of the night we bedded them. And during the night they killed the cook, they raped the women, they took over society, or they ultimately acculturate. Here's what's going on the continent right now. The Koreans and the Chinese are not going in to the continent and forcing or pressing overtly their systems on the Africans. They're doing it in a covert way. And one of the ways they're doing it is by marrying and also producing children. So if the child is a child of a Korean or a Chinese, who both of them have strong cultural contexts, usually what's going to happen is they're going to impose or transmute that culture into that child. So we're going to see the shifting of the African community, not by an oppressive external act, but just by the fact that they have cohabitated and they are putting their culture, not even imposing. The child is a child of a Korean, is a child of a Chinese, and it's not. Now here's what usually happens. It's one thing if they become bicultural, but usually what happens, when I have found, when a individual who are acculturating or seeking to acculturate engages one who is of the dominant or the oppressive society, they take on even more so the beliefs and the expression that's different from their indigenous expression. Now, this is something I really hope you can get that. So there becomes a disconnect from your indigenous or the spirit practices of your ancestors. Many times when we talk about the spirit practices of our ancestors, up until recently, it's been shunned upon. It's been looked at as you being pagan. It's been looked at as you're doing something that's spooky. But now, you have Christians who talk about the astrological signs, who wear stones and all of those things, because it's becoming culturally acceptable. But it was acceptable when we gave it to the oppressive cultures. Now we didn't give it to them; they stole it. Okay. Another thing, when we talk about spiritual impact of acculturation on Africans, we have to be conscious of the loss of community and traditions. African spirit practices is often communal and tradition-based. The process of acculturation disrupts these communal bonds and traditions. We saw that if you saw the movie Roots. I encourage you to watch that. It's a pretty good depiction of what happens and how they separated those who spoke alike. They separated those who have the same religious practice, but we are a creative people because we are created in the image and after the likeness of sorts. And so we tune in, tap into creativity. So we can take lemons and turn it into lemonades. We can take an imposing belief system and rework it, but at the same time, it looks like we're doing the same thing they're doing, but they're doing something very different. Like when you look at Santa Maria, I believe it is, the what they call voodoo, the Catholic Church. The Haitians were able to incorporate their spiritual practice so easily into the Catholicism, and so they embraced it. So even in the Black church, the drum is heavy, the music is heavy, where in the traditional white church, that is not the same. It's not the same beat. It's there. The Hammond B3 is essential to the traditional Black experience, where not necessarily the case. They use the wind instruments. They use symphonic type instruments, symphony type instruments. It's a different vibrational frequency. So there's a loss of community when you acculturate. The spirit system was the coming together of the community. The religious system has been the segmenting, the tearing apart of the communities. We all may be Christians or Protestants, but we protest one another. The Baptists don't talk to the Methodists. The Methodists don't talk to the holiness people, and none of them talk to the New Thought people. And the New Thought people most definitely don't talk to the culturally oriented, expressive spiritual practices that they engage. So we have to understand that our community has been segmented because of acculturation. Now, spiritual alienation. As Africans, and as we adopt these religious practices, these religions, these spiritual practices that are not of the indigenous. Now, here's the thing: they are of the indigenous. They have their start in Africa, but we allow the disconnect. These religions show up out of nowhere. The world is, I mean, the human expression is over 300,000 years, and it wasn't until 2,000 years that God decided to send its son. Isn't that crazy? You had 300,000 years of history, and it's not until the last 2,000 years that God decided to present itself. But when you really study Kemetic or ancient African civilizations, where man shows up, source shows up. And they have ways of showing you that they were connected to. Like the Dogon, they studied the stars. They saw themselves as part of that star blanket that they can look up and see. As above, so below. And so we have to understand that we got to realize that acculturation has done and continue to do more damage than good. Is acculturation solely bad? No. But when you do it at the compromise of your design, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And if you got to shift from what you were born as to acculturate into society, something's wrong with that picture. They're not acculturating, but we are. The alienation process occurs because the adopted spirit practices don't resonate with adequately, or do they address the unique historical, cultural, and existential experiences of Africans. And you're wearing a mask if you just celebrate, if your church only celebrate Blackness during Kwanzaa and connect it all together, even with the concept of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa has been stated to be the last 7 days of the year. But we'll do Kwanzaa the first part of the month. We'll do Kwanzaa in the first week because now people want to make sure that the Black vendors get part of that holiday money. Because they found that if they wait till the last week of the month, then all the money is spent on the holiday of Christmas. Now, I have no problem with holiday. Some of my best childhood memories come with Christmas. But my parents never allowed us to think that someone other than them was providing our our gifts, the table settings. You know, for a little while they allowed us to enjoy that story of Santa Claus. But there came a point of realization that Santa didn't do this. No white man came down through a chimney, because I remember living at 3503 West Fifth Avenue, and we lived on the third floor. And I was like, we don't have a chimney. There was like a skylight up there, and I think for a little while my mama convinced me that Santa came down through the skylight. But at the same time, there came a point where she ultimately told me, look, there is no Santa Claus. I am. Your father is Santa Claus. And we embrace it. They didn't say we couldn't celebrate it neither. I embrace the beauty of the spirit of Christmas when it's done right. I also embrace the beauty of Kwanzaa, the last 7 days of the year. Why do we move it for financial gain? If we're going to be true to this stuff, be true to this stuff. If it's supposed to be, Christmas is not shifted. They do Christmas the 25th of December. Always. They know that people start saving their money for the end of the year. They don't even spend it. Why can't we put it aside? But see, Kwanzaa is not about buying gifts. If anything, it's about making gifts. It's about Kuumba, about the spirit of creativity. It's about the community coming together, celebrating the harvest, celebrating the year that has gone by, and envisioning what we can do on the year to come. But you know, we wear too many masks. Even Black folks are dressing up as Africans, but don't have a African consciousness, because we're disoriented, because we are misoriented. I say embrace it. Embrace it. I know why I wear everything I wear. Not only do I wear it because it looks good, but I also know that it oftentimes can make me feel good. And also, sometimes it keeps me centered. It also sends a message to some people. So it's important that we understand that the acculturation process has been to our demise. While acculturation can lead to certain benefits, such as increased opportunities and access to global networks, its impact on the psychological and spiritual health of Africans on the continent and in the diaspora has been largely detrimental. Look at our families. Look at our communities. Look at the number of Black men who are incarcerated. Look at the manifestation of our children, how they're showing up, what they're looking like. Come on now. We got to talk about the elephant that's in the room. The loss of cultural identity, internalized inferiority, mental health challenges, disconnection from indigenous spirit practices, loss of community, and spiritual alienation are significant consequences that we need to begin to address. And that's what the science of successful living is all about. It's not about you acculturating. It's not about you amassing things. It's about you allowing your soul to express uninhibited. Yes, it's important. So the spiritual beliefs are crucial for us in mitigating the negative effects and fostering a sense of pride, well-being, and belonging amongst Africans in the diaspora on the continent. We have much to give, just as in the beginning we gave. Now we're in the place of receiving. But I'm saying we got to retrieve from that and return to the givers as the givers of society. Giving to ourselves first, giving to our communities, giving attention to those who look like us, walk like us, talk like us. Let our brothers and sister problems become our problems. Not that we take on a level of codependency or that we foster codependence in them, but we foster a sense of interdependence. I am my brother's keeper. If you want to make another step, I'm not going to take the step, but I'll support you in that step. So there's some things we need to do. So there is a danger of acculturation. Yes. Well, I hope something was said that has been uplifting and encouraging. Let me look and see if there is anything that over here that questions. If you got a question, I hope you raise your hand or you put it in the chat here. If you got a question, you can raise your hand. But before we do that, I usually take this opportunity to talk about the law of circulation. Now, I talk about the law of circulation because many of you are experiencing financial streams that are weak. And if you want to turn up the stream of financial flow in your life, there's certain practices you can take on. First, you got to be willing to be a giver and not just a receiver. If you're only receiving, eventually your well is going to run dry. That's why you have the stream that you have. But if you want to have a gush, you got to have a balance. You got to give and you got to receive. You got to know when money comes in, there's some money looking to get out. You got to keep it flowing. So here at Oasis Spiritual Center for Divine Living, also the the Science of Successful Living presentation, we make space for those of you who will join us each week to give according to the abundance that has been given to you. I'm not going to designate to you what you should give, but examine your heart, not your head. Many times we give from our head, but if you want to reap a bountiful harvest, you got to give bountifully of what you have. So if you desire to be a blessing to this ministry, a blessing to me because you found value in something that I've said this morning, take some time that what you have in your possession into our possession. And the way you do that, if you have Cash App or Zelle, all you have to do is put in the number 708 368 1076. Matter of fact, it's right there on the screen. To my left on the lower side of that screen, you see the phone number 708 368 1076. You put that in your Zelle or you put that in Cash App, then you can transmute whatever you desire from where you are to where we are. Now, maybe you don't have Zelle or you don't use Cash App, then you can go to the website www.oasisspiritualcenter.com. oasisspiritualcenter.com. Go to the giving tab, and there you'll find various ways you too can transmute what you have in your possession into the ministry because it blesses you. Now, let's do this. Each week, for those of you who are participating, we have a participatory exercise that we like you to go through with us. Though we can't send the offering plate in front of you, you don't hear the change being dropped into the basket, those kinds of things, we can participate in this way. Just close your eyes and repeat after me. In my hand, I hold my seed. I sow my seed not for greed, but I sow my seed in alignment with spiritual principles and spirit practices. So I give, I'll get. And when I receive, I shall give. So I say, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I give, and all that I receive. Now say this: circulate, circulate, circulate. Awesome. So when you go into this week, as you take care of your financial obligations, your financial commitments, you know that all of your needs are met, that you live a debt-free life because you honor your commitments, and that there's a stream that flows steady towards you. So as money comes in, it has an assignment. And as money goes out, it fulfills that assignment. And you always have more than enough to take on the activities of life. All right, good. So let's see here. It was good to see so many of you in the Zoom room this morning. Tanya, Carolyn, it's good to see you, Cheryl, Aunt, my mom. It's good to see all of you this morning. Those of you on the Zoom room, good morning to you too. Okay, I don't see any hands up. I don't see any hands up. If somebody want to raise your hand and tell me, can I get one person to tell me what's your takeaway on this morning? What do you leave with this morning? If I can get one person to do that. Look here, got a couple hands. No hands coming up, but I'm asking that. I'm making that appeal. All right, thank you, Carolyn. Okay, you have the mic, Carolyn.
Good morning, Asar.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good morning. Good morning to everyone. Listen, you're in my wheelhouse this morning, okay?
Yes,
And what I'm
yes.
taking away, what I'm taking away from this morning is learning to like me. Um, I grew up wondering why I always had to apologize. Well, not grew up because actually I didn't realize I was black until my senior year. When you
Mm,
talk about dressing, because everything I knew was black. My doctor was black, my grocer was black, the beautician was black, everything around me was black. So black was never an issue, for us until 1968, really, in my life. I didn't realize that my mom had been working all that time, that she was actually one of the initiators of SNCC in this area. But after 1969, Asar, and I was bused to this prep school where senators and congressmen and all of those kids went, right? And I realized I was different. And I didn't know what made me different until my homeroom teacher explained to me it was because I was black. Hmm. And that stayed with me for years. As a matter of fact, it stayed with me until I wrote my master's thesis. Is when I was able to forgive her and realize that she was the one that didn't understand. But yes, sir, what I'm taking away and still taking me some time with the cultivation, right? Because as my mom would say, we never asked for integration, we asked for equality.
yes.
We never wanted to integrate. That was not the option. And it was, you can mark it when we started integrating, that was when our family system started to deteriorate. When we started to try to assimilate and look like what we thought or what we were told was beautiful. And we lost something in ourselves. And actually, at my age today, and even with the understanding that I have today, I still have to guard against that.
Yes.
I still guard against accepting that what I am is what everybody else is really longing to be, but they can never achieve. I'm struggling to get something that I already have.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, that's my takeaway this morning. Thank you for the teaching this morning. It reinforces the idea that, and let me just give you one example. I was with a group of white friends, and everybody's colorblind, so they say, and I'm like, how can you be colorblind?
Right.
And one lady thought she had to apologize to me. She said, Carolyn, she said, you're just as good as I am.
Validating you, right?
Uh-huh. And Asar, before I had time to think about it, I said, see, you just told me where you are. Because what you're seeing me as is less than you. I said, why didn't you say I'm as good as you are? Carolyn, I'm just as good as you are. Yeah. And it's because they've been taught that too,
Yeah.
They've been taught that. But sometimes my patience doesn't go that far because it is intentional.
Right.
It is intentional. So thank you for this morning.
And thank you for that share. It's very significant. Somebody else on this call is resonating with that. And what gets me, the reason why I'm writing this book, why do we think every system is impacted by the oppressing, except our religious system?
Mm-hmm.
How can we embrace totally hook, line, and sinker the ideas and the concepts that have been given to us? They have taken that which was ours, they rewrote
Yes.
it and made it theirs, and they sold it back to us as theirs. And we got to say, okay, I bought it, but now
Right.
I'm going to deconstruct it. I'm going to take it back to the place from whence you stole it. And then I'm going to understand it in the true essence that the African presented it to the world. And watch what happens.
That's it. So let me share just one more thing.
Mhm.
Um, I got my worst spanking. I'll call it spanking. I got my worst spanking at 12 years old because I'm going to church and I'm listening at everything that's being said. And at 12 years old, I argued with the superintendent of the Sunday school class. And I told him, I said, well, look, I tell you what, this place y'all call heaven, this place y'all call hell, he can just let me go to hell in peace because I can't do what y'all are saying. Oh my goodness, my mom. Went ballistic. And when we got home, that's that spanking I got, right? But this is what she told me. She said, I'm not spanking, I'm not, and I'm going to say the word, I'm not whipping you because of what you said. I'm whipping you because of who you said it to. She said, that was an old gray haired man and you disrespected him. I said, but he wasn't telling the truth. And even though she whipped me, I never took it back, Asar. She never asked me to
But
go
see, that's it.
apologize.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, but then why'd you whoop me? See
Yes,
that
yes.
that keeps us in bounds. And so many of us who are experiencing cognitive dissonance is because we believe we're going to get whooped if we stand.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get
Mm-hmm.
ostracized. The same people we love, the same people we share community with, the moment we present a different perspective, then they're going to ostracize you. You're going to hell. Where's the concept of love and all of that? If love,
Mm-hmm.
see, that's, I asked God at 12, as I knew it, God, the term I knew then.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
If you are real,
that's it.
show me. Say that over, so I'm 63, so over the 40 years, I asked that at 12, so over 50 years, source has shown itself strong to me. And the
Yes.
one I limited source, he said, source said to me, you have to let go if you want to see more. We confine source to God, and we
Mm-hmm.
confine the precepts to the preambles to the church creeds. The word tells us, the word says explicitly, the traditions of men have made the word of source of no impact.
No effect. No
That's
effect.
why I say, how's
And,
that working for us?
and don't you
Yes.
think, sorry, this I think this sometimes that because we create a conflict in ourselves because we're trying to worship this image that has been presented to us as God, and yet that image does not resonate with us.
Don't resonate with us is not true at all. But
Yes.
truth becomes relative to what a one believes. And even, that sage called Jesus said, be it according to your belief. If you want
Mm-hmm.
to be a lie, believe a lie, so be it.
So be it.
So be it. Awesome. I see my mom's hand is up, and then to leave this morning. Yeah, Mike. Thanks, Carolyn.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
All right, Mom, you have the
Good morning. How
good
are
morning.
you all doing?
We are well.
I
Thank you.
resonate with everything. Hello?
Yes, we're here.
I resonate with every word that Carolyn said, although I'm great older. You know, the people look at me. You speaking about hair, how they did this, how they. I don't do nothing to mine. Where did you get such a beautiful hair from? I don't know. What are you? The color of your skin. What nationality are you? I used to put down on application when I was applying for jobs. Other. Yeah. Why do people look at you? Your skin might be the same color your hair or your eyes or whatever, and try to figure out what are you? What difference does it make? What difference does it make? Ooh, you got such pretty hair. Oh, your skin is so pretty. Oh, what do you use? Water, sometimes soap. You know, why do people do that, Greg?
Well, they do it because first of all, you're a deviation from what they see the African as something that's ugly. And when you show up as an African, you have the hue, but your hair may be of a different texture. They're like, wow, are you something other than? And a lot of times we present these other variations because of what happened to us in enslavement. If I'm not mistaken, my great grandfather was white. Great great grandfather on my grandmother's side. Is that not right?
He was Swede in India.
Okay, so that's why you got red hair.
On my daddy's side,
Okay, so
the Purnells.
yeah, we are a compilation of those who come before us. But the core of who all we are, all humanity, the core of everyone who is in this earth realm is they're Africans. We have deviations. So the phenotype was the African with the tight knit hair. But over the course of time, because of the cultures, the environments, we grew longer hair for its benefits for that environment we were in. But it doesn't make any one of them better than the other. But it did in the environments that we're in, it lent itself for extenuation of life. So we got to stop defining what's good based on externals. We got to stop.
Are you from Louisiana? Are you from New
Right.
Orleans?
People
All
don't
of this junk.
You know, and it skips from generation to generation. One generation may look more Africoid than the other. The next generation, like my granddaughter, my granddaughter has your hair, the red hair. Greg
And
has
your
red hair.
grandson.
Right. So it goes from generation to generation, but they still Africans. Or you know, then have to we deviate and say, well, I'm not African, I'm an Indian. And we don't understand the history of the Indian in America. The Native Americans had a strong African influence. Now, the reality is all mankind has a strong African influence. Just the environment expresses through them differently. Good. I hope that puts something on everybody's mind. Embrace the skin that you're in. Be proud to be of African descent. For in the beginning, in Genesis 1:27, when God, source, made man after his image, after his likeness, male and female made he them, guess who he looked like? Guess who they look like? They look like you. And so it is. You guys have a wonderful day. We're going to leave with this song that I really enjoy. And I introduced to you a couple weeks ago. It's I Am Divine. And so listen to this as we leave.
Of the true and final state, the divine
Peace.
nature. Divinity is realized by adherence to divine laws, and it confers upon man access to divine or superhuman abilities, the elevation of abilities and talents, and qualifies her to enter into a partnership with God. Meduna Ter, Volume 6, by Ra Nefer. Amen. I am right. for its superlative civilization, unparalleled to this